Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Fairy Fountain Podcast. My name is Caden, and I'll be your host. Today, we are going to continue the series on The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and this episode is going to be all about Hyrule's surface level. So we'll talk about all of the big changes there and the best parts of being on Hyrule's surface. So let's get right into it. Alright, so we will start off from the point where Link dives down to the surface after seeing the Zelda ghostly apparition, and we learn that she is somewhere far away from Link. It was at that moment I knew that she was in the past, but not everyone has put it together there. But since we are covering full spoilers here, Zelda is in the past. We hear her voice tell us to find her, and a golden light comes from Lookout Landing. So Link bullets down to the surface of Hyrule. We land in a very special pond, and he comes out. And that's where our episode is going to begin. So, the very first thing I did when I landed, and I don't know about all of you guys, but I noticed the little resource outpost that Hudson Construction has left all over Hyrule. And I walked Link right over there, and the first thing I did before going to Lookout Landing or fighting any monsters or doing anything else was put together a little janky, shaky little car using wagon wheels and wooden planks, and I even put 2 headlights on it with bright bloom seeds, and it was terrible. I didn't have the battery output to get it to drive far, but you better believe I rode that thing to Lookout Landing. And I didn't have a steering stick at the time, so I couldn't even turn it. So just picture Link wobbling around on this wobbly little makeshift machine, and every 2 seconds, it flaps over on its side because it was not very well balanced and it didn't have a steering stick, so it would just go over bumps and topple over. But that's something I'm always going to remember about this game. I was so excited to build a vehicle after I had seen everyone's creations online and in the trailers, so that's how I got to Lookout Landing. I guess that is going to be the next thing that we will touch on there. So Lookout Landing is like your new hub town, and I think it's my favorite town in the game because Breath of the Wild didn't have a town that you could continuously go back to. Lookout Landing in Tears of the Kingdom is sort of similar to Clock Town. It changes over time as you progress through the story, and it acts as like a hub. You can go there to sell things, you can go there to buy armor, you can go there to talk to Purah. Spoiler, Purah and Robbie are back in this game. And one of the very first things you do when you get to Lookout Landing is meet Purah. So she's a fan favorite character, and so is Robbie. They are the 2 Sheikah scientists from Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity. And they helped develop the Sheikah Slate, and they played a big role in fighting the Calamity. In Age of Calamity, we saw Purah and Robbie as their young adult versions because Age of Calamity was a prequel. But here, Purah is continuing to mess with her anti-aging rune, which in Breath of the Wild had turned her into a child, and it was really funny because she was about a foot tall and looked like a toddler. But in this game, she is back to a young woman, and everyone was going crazy, talking about how good she looks, and she does look very good. I love her design. Everyone was simping over Purah, and it was really great to see. So we meet Purah, and there's a cute little cutscene that plays out. And she's like, Linky, are you real? And we have to prove to her that we are. And we explain the situation to her. And it's from here on out where Purah will act as our main guide. She develops a plan to find out where Zelda is and what happened with the mummy. Link tells Purah about Ganondorf, and he's known as the mummy until later on in the story. At Lookout Landing, Robbie is also there in the beginning of this game. And he is working with either Jasha or Yosha? I don't know which one you want to say. It could be either. I guess we'll just go with Jasha. So Jasha is a young girl who is from the Sheikah tribe, and she is very interested in the depths. We won't touch on the depths in this episode, but that's what her character is there for. She is super interested in chasms and basically the life in the depths, the landmarks. She's very interested in the depths, and she has her own little research area where she's looking for these ancient art forms and statues in the depths. But she's there. She's currently working with Robbie. This was a quest that I kind of missed. So basically, in the early part of the game, you're supposed to talk to Robbie and go with him down to this first Central Hyrule chasm and explore the depths. And then from there on out, Robbie will leave and go on back to the Akala Ancient Tech Lab, and he will help you further upgrade your Purapad. But I didn't know that, and I don't know, I had to come back and do this quest. I didn't go into the depths until later on in the game, so I really played... I might have done the whole quest in Hebra with Tulin before I did anything in the depths, but we will touch on main story quests and the new champions in a future episode. But yeah, so we have Purah, Robbie, and Josha. So Lookout Landing really brings a sense of community and like a place to call home on your journey through Hyrule. It really makes it feel more lively. It is really cool to discover a chasm, and most people will do this at that point. So chasms are this like gloomy hole that the upheaval has erupted into the ground surrounding Hyrule. And one of my favorite little sequences, and this is as far as we'll go on the depths, is when you jump into a chasm and the music has like it must be like an oboe or something that plays, and it's like boom. It's a very cool moment there with the music, and it looks visually really cool. It's sort of like starry, sparkly, and then you enter the super dark depths. But that's where we'll leave it for depths talk today. I guess the next thing I want to talk about here on the surface, which most people will come into pretty quickly, are the stables. So stables return from Breath of the Wild, and they're much more interesting this time. I really didn't like stables that much in Breath of the Wild. They were cool, but honestly, I only used them to grab a horse when I needed one. And I think that in Tears of the Kingdom, they knew that they really needed to do something to shake up the stables and make them more important in Tears, because you don't need to use horses as much, so people might not come to them at all. So basically, in Tears of the Kingdom, they added stables to function as social networks, basically. So there's a lot more people inside stables, and every time you talk to either the stable hand or one of the people reading a newspaper sitting down inside the stable, they will give you updates basically on your journey. So as you complete dungeons, they'll be like, wow, new news reports show that someone has reawakened the mystery of the Stormwind Arc. It'll be stuff like that, and it's really cool because it makes you feel like you have an impact on this world. Hyrule is much more lively this time. And the stables also have pony points now. So every time you find a new stable or register a horse or something, you'll earn 1 pony point. Pony points can give you rewards like sleepover tickets, which allow you to stay at a stable for free. And that will fully restore your health and give you some bonus hearts. Or you can also earn accessories for your horse. So you can earn a towing harness, which is helpful for some side quests later on. And like horse armor and saddles, you'll earn from getting pony points. So that's pretty cool. It gives a lot more incentive to go and visit the stables now, which wasn't really a thing we had in Breath of the Wild. And one of the biggest additions to the stables this time are the Lucky Clover Gazette and Pen. So there's this whole newsline reporter quest, which takes place it starts in an old abandoned stable in Hebra, which has been converted into the headquarters for the Lucky Clover Gazette. And Crazy Tracy, a character from Breath of the Wild, returns, but this time she is now the head of the Lucky Clover Gazette. And this quest sees Link partnering together with a bird named Pen. He might be a pelican, I can't quite remember, but he's like a white bird. He's sort of like a cast replacement. He's really cool, very funny. He has a catchphrase, and it's "soar long." So every time you complete a quest with him, he's like, "Soar long, newbie." And it's really cool because there's a lot of mysteries you get to solve. A lot of them focus on fake Zelda sightings. So there's like one where there's a couple of Yiga clan members that disguise themselves as Zelda, and people have been reporting to the news that Zelda's been sighted, and you have to go and investigate it with Pen. And every time you find out the truth behind one of these mysteries, you earn some rupees or a little reward. And these are adorable quests, and they get quite funny too. There's one in the Eldin region where we come to find out, I believe that this was Ganondorf disguised as Zelda, Or maybe a Yiga member, I can't remember exactly, but it's not really Zelda. Zelda goes up to a troop of soldiers that's stationed in Eldin, and she tells them to take off all of their armor and journey into a monster cave naked to become stronger, as armor makes them weaker. And it's hilarious because they're in their underwear practicing, and it's like, for Hyrule, for our princess. It's very funny. They have full faith in Zelda, and they couldn't tell that it wasn't really her. So stables are really great social networks. I felt much more inclined to go and visit them and check on the people in there in Tears of the Kingdom as opposed to Breath of the Wild. Another big addition that people were so stoked for in the lead up to this game are the caves. So caves are now spread all throughout Hyrule, and the story explanation for them being there now is that the upheaval shook things around and created openings to ancient caves. So caves are really great because they're like little side hunts, not quests, but hunts. As you're heading somewhere, you'll notice openings in mountains and stuff, or holes in the ground. And as you venture into them, you'll get the little ba-dum, and it'll say like, new cave found. And there's all sorts of good reasons to go in here. You can find sticky lizards, which are used in potions and upgrading certain armor sets that allow Link to climb during the rain. So super important because, as everyone knows, people hated climbing in the rain in Breath of the Wild. So sticky lizards are like a way to combat that and make it a little easier. There are also more bright bloom seeds in the caves around Hyrule, and you can throw those to light your surroundings up. There will often be like little monster outposts here, and one of the new monsters in this game are called Horriblins, and they're like cave-dwelling bokoblins. They're not very strong, they're a little bit ape-like, and they like climb the ceilings, and they have these big noses, and they usually fight with spears. So Link can defeat them, and they leave behind little treasure chests in these caves. And you can get some good rewards from there, whether it be meat or rupees or something. More caves also means there's a lot more locations to find truffles in Hyrule, which are great for recipes. I wrote a whole article on the best recipes in Tears of the Kingdom, and truffles are one of the most important recipe components. So it's great that there's more opportunities to find these. And I think it really just makes Hyrule feel a lot more natural having caves now, and it makes it feel like a world that's been lived in. And oftentimes you can find armor pieces in these caves hidden by a bandit called Misko. Misko hides old amiibo unlocks from Breath of the Wild. So you can find like the Skyward Sword armor or the Twilight Princess armor in these caves now. So there's a lot of reasons to go exploring through them, and they're just very cool settings. I love the caves being in here. And the big quests that caves introduced are the bubble gems. So sometimes outside of caves, you will see a little Satori Mountain Spirit, Bloopies. And if you shoot them, they'll drop their rupees and run off into caves. And caves are connected to the spirit of the mountain. So if you go to Satori Mountain and drop an apple in one of the offering statues, the spirit of the mountain, Satori, will show up, and lots of blue beams will sprout all over the map, which will show you where caves are located. And in each cave, there's something called a bubble frog, which is like a really large bloopy. And if you shoot them with an arrow or defeat them with a weapon, they will drop a bubble gem. Bubble gems are used as collectibles in this game, and the more you collect, the more you can exchange for enemy masks that in Breath of the Wild Kilton had, but now he has a brother named Colton who is obsessed with becoming a Satori. So in exchange for bubble gems, you earn your masks, and you also earn a really cool armor set. I believe it's called the Mystic set, and it makes Link look like a Super Saiyan from Dragon Ball Z, and it's a really cool armor set, and it functions as magic armor, like in the older games. So if Link takes damage while wearing that set, he won't lose hearts, he'll instead lose a lot of rupees. So it's a very cool set of armor, and that's basically everything about caves. They sort of function as natural mini dungeons, so they're great. I'm glad they're here. It's hard to believe they weren't there in Breath of the Wild. The next thing that is a big shakeup for Hyrule's surface are the big boss battles they added. So in the early trailers for Tears of the Kingdom, we saw the Battle Talus, and they make great use of all of Link's new abilities. So a Battle Talus is a stone talus with a fortress built on top of it, where bokoblins and sometimes Arakudas will surround them and fight on top of there, and it's like an extra layer of defense for a stone talus, and they're really fun fights because you have to find a way up there, you have to take out all of the bokoblins, and then get up to the weak point on the stone talus and take it down. So I was always using Ascend to get up there, or I could recall the rock arms that the talus was sending to me, and they're just great fights. Very unique, and they make a great use of all of Link's abilities. They also heavily improved the Hinox fights in this game. So Hinox are still really easy to fight after a while, but they're still fun. They have their one big eye, big giant ogres, and this time they have really cool horns. You can still sneak up to them and take the little weapons they're wearing as necklaces off of their necks, but they drop really cool horns. You can make Hinox hammers and stuff now in this game, and they're a lot more fun to fight. So, not a huge change, but it's glad that they improved them. Like, it's a good thing they improved them at all. And their horns are a lot more useful, so you have a lot more reason to not just skip them, but rather fight them and pick up their drops. Lionel fights are more fun than they have ever been. I loved fighting a silver Lionel in this game. Super fun fight. I did it with my fiance right next to me, and we were both getting really into it. And Lionel fights were fun in Breath of the Wild, but they're even better now because sometimes Lionels will be wearing armor, and that adds a little bit of extra defense, and you have to break their armor before you can damage them. Or they have their new horns. There's a mace horn and a saber horn for Lionels now, and these horns are the most powerful fuse items in the game, so you have a lot more reason to take on Lionels. They're really cool. Great fights. You feel so powerful when you're fighting a Lionel. I'm super glad they're back. Super glad they added the great horns to them. Like the saber horn of a silver Lionel looks just like a giant katana. My favorite fuse item. Love wielding a silver Lionel sword. And the mace is sort of like a deer antler, and it works as like a blunt weapon. So it's good as like a hammer. It's also pretty strong, but defeating Lionels will give you great drops. And then one of the coolest things they added to this game that you can find on Hyrule's surface are Gleeoks. So if you played Zelda 1, a Gleeok is the 3-headed boss from the first dungeon, I believe, and it breathes fire. They return in Tears of the Kingdom, and they're so freaking cool. The game doesn't stutter really at all when you're fighting them, but they're huge, massive 3-headed dragons, and they come in fire, ice, thunder, and gloom variants, and also a King Gleeok variant. So a King Gleeok has a thunder head, a fire head, and an ice head, and they're really, really fun. And really the only way you can fight these guys is to take down each of their heads, like to get a strike in the eyeball on each of the 3 heads, and then they'll fall from the sky and take fall damage, and it'll create an opening for Link to attack them. But one of the coolest parts of this fight is that it makes great use of the new ability Link has to explore the sky. So eventually they'll fly up really high, and they'll do some sort of an attack where Link has to ride up on a giant wave in order to take them down. And they're super cinematic and fun fights, and I love fighting a Gleeok. I really put it off in my playthrough because I was terrified of them. The first one I encountered was a Thunder Gleeok, which is in the Colosseum on Hyrule's surface, so it's really near to the Great Plateau in that central Hyrule area, and I died in like 2 seconds, so I was terrified of them from then on, but they're so fun, and they're cool aerial battles. I love that they're here. I'd like to next touch on the other towns in Tears of the Kingdom. So we already talked about Lookout Landing being the big new town, but Tarrytown also returns. And the president of Hudson Construction is back in this game, and he still has his wife Ronsind, which they got married in Breath of the Wild, and Link played a part in that quest. And now they have a child named Madison. Of course she has the son at the end of her name, but it's so cool that they're back, and like it made me feel at least like I played a part in this relationship being here, and now they have a baby, and that was so cool. A lot of time must have passed between these games though, because Madison is like 7. Or maybe 5 years old. She looks a little older than 5. But of course now, Tarrytown has expanded, and there's now this like vehicle testing area down at the bottom, and there's a Hudson Construction vehicle research development team, and it's basically like a skate park. So if you want to build some cool Ultra Hand creations, go to the lower half of Tarrytown and explore those ramps there, and you can really find out what your vehicle creations can do. It was an adorable quest with Hudson, Ronson, and Madison, where basically because Madison is a half Gerudo child, no women in Gerudo Town are allowed to talk to men until they're older. It's part of their culture. And I love the way that this game expressed that different cultures and a relationship that combines two cultures. So it was really hard for Hudson, the president of Hudson Construction, to accept that his daughter had to go away. In Gerudo culture, all the young Gerudo women have to make a voyage to Gerudo Town and stay there for a while. So Ronson and Hudson have a serious talk about this, and Link even plays a part in bringing them together and bringing Madison to talk to her father. And eventually, Hudson creates this beautiful blimp for Ronson and Madison to ride on with him, and it's a good way for them to send her off. And once this quest is complete, you can even go and visit Madison in Gerudo Town, and she's wondering how her father is doing. There's also another guy in Gerudo Town who snuck in there to visit his daughter, and he ends up being thrown in jail, so it's a really funny quest. There's also a Dream Home quest again in Terrytown. So last time Link could buy a home in Breath of the Wild in Hateno Village, but this time it's in Terrytown. And Ronson basically manages their Hudson construction facility, and you talk to her, and you can eventually buy yourself a dream home. It's super expensive, but I loved this quest. And Link has to use Ultra Hand to put these little pre-built home nodes together, and there's like a kitchen, a bedroom, weapon stands, shield stands, bow stands, all sorts of things. And it's really fun to combine your house and like make it to your liking. I loved that quest. Super cool that they added that. That's about all there was for Terrytown. So the next town we'll talk on is Hateno, Link's old home from Breath of the Wild. I was really excited to go to Hateno Village. It took me a while to get there. I don't think I did it until I had completed my third dungeon. But when I finally got there and I visited Link's old house, you find out basically that Link and Zelda were living together in the Hateno house that Link bought in the last game. So basically, Link and Zelda are sharing this home, and Zelda has her own little secret nook in the well behind the house, and it's really adorable. And that's in that nook that Zelda has is where Link can find his old headband from Breath of the Wild to put his hair back up, because you start in Tears of the Kingdom with Link's hair being down. And it's called the well-worn hairband, I think, or hair tie, something like that. And it's really sweet. And there's clearly memories surrounding that because Link's been wearing that for a long time. And it's really sweet to know that Link and Zelda have been living together. And we actually find out from reading Zelda's diary that Link has a new champion's tunic that Zelda built for him because his first one was getting worn and she knew how much it meant to him. And it's not like explicitly stated that they're living together, but you can totally pick up on it. And it's adorable, and I love that for them. There are also some big things going on in Hateno Village where basically there's an election going on, and there's a fashion versus cheese and tradition quest. So, Cece and, what's the other guy's name? Oh, this really stinks. I don't remember his name, but there's another guy who's mayor of Hateno Village, and a new girl named Cece who is all about fashion, and she creates this new mushroom line of clothing that everyone is starting to fall in love with. It's basically a big old mushroom hat, and there's mushroom lamps all around Hateno Village now, and they're really butting heads. And this is kind of a metaphor for tradition versus innovation. Cece representing innovation, and the other guy, the old mayor, who has a recipe for cheese in his family, being tradition. So, it's sort of like what's going on with Zelda right now. Zelda moved away from a lot of its traditions and found a lot of new fans in innovation. And basically the way you sort this quest out between the two results in them kind of coming together and settling their differences, and Cece does end up as mayor, I believe. Or at least she did in my playthrough. I'm not sure if you can change that. But it's a really sweet quest that sort of represents the state of Zelda, and I loved seeing it play out. It's cool that there are things like this happening in Hyrule, mayoral elections. Also, the introduction to cheese is really funny, and once you complete this quest with the other current mayor before Cece's family, you unlock the ability to buy cheese and create recipes like pizza and cheesy tomatoes, and everybody loves cheese. It's great that it's in this game. Okay, I'm sorry if there was a harsh cut there. I was thirstier than a crisp Zora, so I need to go get a drink, but alright. I think we left off after talking about the Mushroom Takeover and the Hateno election and all that. So the next village is Kakariko. So Kakariko is probably the one village I was probably most excited to come to Kakariko but it doesn't really have that many changes or quests. So now there are the ring ruins that fell from the sky during the upheaval, and there's like a large arch-shaped ring floating above the village of Kakariko. And the one good thing that does happen here is Paya is now much braver and more competent, because in Breath of the Wild she was very shy, wouldn't talk to Link, had no self-confidence, but here she's actually been made the leader of the Sheikah. Impa stepped down and had Paya take her place, and Impa is now off investigating the geoglyphs that are spread around Hyrule, and we will touch on those in another episode. But now that Paya is here, she's braver than ever. She comes face to face and talks with Link, and she's now friends with a man named Toro. Toro is a man that is also part of the Zonai research team, so he heads research into Zonai glyphs and stuff, and he helps translate Zonai language. So he plays a key role in finding out the mystery surrounding the ring ruins, and this is the only big quest Kakariko Village has, which is kind of weird because it is definitely the shortest quest out of all of the main dungeons and stuff, but you basically venture with Toro to the Zonai ruins in the Faron region, and he helps you translate some ancient texts on the story tabs that are spread throughout the sky of Hyrule, but that's about all he does. And Toro was kind of hyped up, and a lot of people were obsessed with him, because he's got like a 12-pack, and he's very muscly. I think like Paya might even like him, but his quest is too short. I wish we spent more time with him. I wish we got to know him better, because he is a cool character, but the segment with him is really very short. It feels less important overall, and I think Kakariko is the only village I was a little disappointed in, but I still had a lot of fun, and it was great to see the citizens of Kakariko again. I'll also talk about the Akkala Tech Lab quick. So after you complete the quest with Robbie and Joshua in Lookout Landing and they research the depths a little bit, Robbie will return to his home in Akkala Tech Lab. But when Link gets there, it's overrun by the Yiga clan. So there's a quick little quest there where you have to clear the Yiga out. And there's also a couple of those like Yiga outposts throughout Hyrule. And as you clear them and rid them of the Yiga clan, you find that the Yiga have basically captured and forced these like clothing experts to craft Yiga costumes. So as you clear them out, you will earn bits and pieces of a Yiga costume, and it's really cool because in this game, Link can dress up as a member of the Yiga clan, and eventually he needs to use that to sneak in to the Yiga clan hideout in the Gerudo Highlands, and it's a very fun quest. But that's besides the point here. Once you get there and Robbie takes back his home, he now heads the development of further features for the Purapad. So that's where you can unlock things like the hero's journey. You can unlock more pictures for the compendium of monsters and items and all of that. And you can also unlock more travel medallions, which are really helpful in this game. So if you haven't done that yet, I suggest you go and talk to Robbie and upgrade your Purapad. There are other villages and towns in this game, but I'm not going to talk on them because they are the Gerudo Town, Zora's Domain, Goron City, and Rito Village, and those are very tied to the story of the 4 dungeons, and I want to do a separate episode on them, and that'll probably be the next one in this series. But for now, I want to leave it at that. I don't want to talk about dungeons yet, because I'm probably going to nerd out on them, and it would take up the time for a whole episode. Next up, let's talk about how finding shrines on the surface has been improved in this game. So I'm sure you've seen in the trailers, and from playing the game yourself, shrines are back. They're even better this time. They're a lot more fun with better puzzles, but they now have swirling green Zonai energy coming out of the top of them. And combine that little beacon, so basically you can notice the shrines a lot easier with the energy swirling around them. You can also look at the world of Hyrule, especially the surface, from a much higher vantage point when you're on the Sky Islands, and it made it a lot more fun to go and find shrines, because I could just jump off an island and dive down to the shrines after I marked them on my map. And it made it a lot smoother and more fun, and I think that's why I had so much fun finding all of the shrines in this game. Next up are the replacement for the Skyview Towers. So in Breath of the Wild, we had the Sheikah Towers that you had to climb up. It was a little painstaking, took a little while, but once you got to the top, you put the Sheikah Slate into a pedestal and you unlocked more of the map. That concept largely returns all the same, but instead of Sheikah Towers, they are now Skyview Towers, and they're a lot more fun and dynamic. So a Skyview Tower does also fill out the map, but you don't have to climb it. Instead, you walk into it from the bottom level, and it shoots Link out the top, and they're a lot more fun this time because they act as quicker ways to reach your surroundings and like plan out your next path. And they're a lot more fun. I found myself visiting them a lot more because in Breath of the Wild they were kind of a one and done trip. You got what you needed from the map and you didn't really need to visit them again. But in Tears of the Kingdom, I'm going back to whatever Skyview Tower is closest to my next objective, shooting out the top of it and gliding right over there. Another thing that takes place on the surface, like I mentioned before, the Yiga are back and they have their little bases, but you can also find them traveling Hyrule. So if you ever come up to a NPC character on your adventures and their name is just Traveler or Researcher, that is not a real person. That is a Yiga member in disguise. So the Yiga foot soldiers are back. They're still fun and silly, not too different. Maybe they could have done more with them, but they don't feel out of place at all. And they're still funny, and there's still so many fun ways to defeat them. They also drop duplex bows, which are multi-shot bows, and they'll probably be the first multi-shot bows that you get. So I know for my first Gleeok fight, I used the duplex bows because I was able to shoot 2 eyes at once instead of just one. So that's a good little tip there if you're still in the early game. And then as we wrap up this episode, I kind of want to talk about on the whole how travel is so much faster, smoother, and more fun now. Because like I said, you can now just jump off of a sky island, mark the place you want to go next, and get there a lot quicker and more fun. It makes finding shrines, caves, Skyview Towers, dungeon, quest-related things so much easier, more fluid, and fun. It really is crazy to me that Breath of the Wild wasn't this fluid. They're very different games. They're still both good, but Breath of the Wild is truly an exploration of the wild, and Tears of the Kingdom is an experience of the world of Hyrule because you can do it fluidly and more fast, and it's just a lot. I feel like it's a lot better this time around. I still appreciate Breath of the Wild, and I feel like there are definitely some benefits and downsides to each. Like in Tears of the Kingdom, you're probably not going to use a horse as much because you're not really going to have time to, it's a lot faster to just jump off of an island instead. So there are ups and downs. Also, having flying machines and sky islands, again, makes it a lot quicker, and you can ascend through mountains and caves. So many new ways of travel that make travel more fun. Also, the quests in this game on the whole are better. There are side adventures where you can team up with people from the Monster Control Group, which have a base in Lookout Landing, and you can basically take on fights with a gang of soldiers of Hyrule, and it's very cool and very fun. There's also the Stable Trotters, which are tied to the Great Fairy Fountains, and they play music again. So there's another big emphasis on music in a Zelda game, which is a classic that many fans, myself included, love. So they travel around, play music for the Great Fairies, and awaken them again in order to allow you to upgrade your armor. Very cute, very fun. There's just a lot more engaging quests this time around, apart from the main one. So side quests are a lot better too. And I guess quickly before I end the episode, I'll touch on the geoglyphs. So they're a cool way to utilize the viewpoint from the sky, because geoglyphs are essentially like crop circles, or a lot of people call them Nazca lines. So they're like carvings in the surface. And when you look at them from close up, they just look like lines. You can't tell what they are. But since the developers knew players were going to be in the sky a lot more, looking at them from above at like a bird's eye view shows the full picture, and they're very heavily related to the stories, and they are called the Dragon Tears storyline. Very heavily related to that. I'm sure you all know about it, but I'll touch on my thoughts on the Dragon Tears storyline in another episode. But I did want to mention here how they're a really cool way to utilize the new viewpoint that Link has, and they also act as markers for where you need to go. So that's going to do it, guys, for our episode on the surface of Hyrule. Lots of great changes there, super fun and engaging, and this is where like the bulk of the changes in the game take place. But I want you guys to subscribe and like the podcast if you enjoyed. Check it out on Spotify or YouTube, wherever you prefer. In the next episode, we are going to be talking about my early impressions of the Super Mario RPG remake and my favorite levels and badges in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And then the next episode of the Zelda series will be 2 weeks from now, and we will touch on the temples. So I hope you guys do choose to stick around. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.